Ken, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate you taking the time to have a conversation with me. Would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself before we get started?
My name's Ken Keathley. I teach theology at Southeastern Baptist Theological Seminary in Wake Forest, North Carolina. I also direct the L. Russ Bush Center for Faith and Culture, which is a center located on the campus of the seminary. I've been teaching here at Southeastern since 2006. Been a professor for, I guess, going on about 25 years now. I was a pastor about 15 years before that. I'm a Midwesterner. My wife and I were born in Missouri. We have 2 grown children and 4 grandchildren.
Cool. I am an atheist, by which I mean I believe that naturalism is the best explanation for everything, as far as I can tell. Could you tell me a little bit more about your position? You are Christian theologian, creation, is that correct?
Yeah. Well, I am. I'm teaching at a Baptist seminary, and we affirm the Baptist Faith and Message 2000. And I'm a conservative evangelical, so that pretty well will give you an idea. There is a spectrum of positions within both of those confessions, but that gives you a pretty good idea that if we go through the hierarchy or the pyramid, first I would be somebody who would be considered a historic Christian in the apostolic confession sense of the word. The Apostolic Creed is something that Roman Catholics, Orthodox, and Protestants all can affirm. And then, of course, as I just got through saying, I'm on the Western tradition, so this means that more Augustinian, and from that we would say, okay, I'm Protestant. And then from Protestant, would say, yeah, I'm of the evangelical variety, and from that, I would say I'm a Baptist. And so that gives you an idea. I'm happy to call everyone within the apostolic confession my brothers in Christ, but I do have my convictions and things that I believe. There are things that I will hold to that are unmovable. Those would be the first order items of the Apostolic Creed. Then there are second order items that I would consider an area of serious disagreement, whether it's with my Roman Catholic brethren or something of that nature. And then there's third order items, things that distinguish various evangelicals. We end up fussing about it all the time, but I consider those to be arguments at the dinner table.
So your mic just started popping a little bit there. Like your first part, the introduction was fine, but now there's a little bit of popping in the background. I don't know what happened there.
I'm not hearing a popping, so it is an electronic situation.
Yes, most likely.
Because here, I don't have anything in the room that's popping.
Yeah, so it's definitely not something in the room. It's definitely got to be something like on the sound card or the mic. Do you have a headset or anything you could put on?
Sure. Let me try that and see if that helps. Here we'll have a buzz. Here we go.
Oh, now it sounds perfect. Now it's gone.
Okay, good.
Wait,
good.
Oh, no, now it's back.
Okay, I don't know.
Do you have a speaker mic, like a different speaker?
I only have this one speaker that's hooked up to it. I could try one of these others and see if this is affecting it. How's that?
Try talking a little bit and see.
This is me. I'm trying talking just a little bit. Still popping?
Yep, still popping.
I don't hear it over my headphones. That's
let's see. I could, because it's definitely something that's happening off from your microphone. I think your microphone is like just shocked a little bit.
Well, I can disconnect it and reconnect it. Try that.
Yeah, try that. You have to re-engage the microphone on the option settings, or else we can't hear you.
Okay, let's see.
Oh, that's perfect. Wait, try talking again.
Here I am talking again.
All right, yeah, now it's gone. Now there's no more popping.
All right, that's interesting. I'm not sure why that happened. You obviously understand these things a little better than me. Do I sound okay?
Yes, sound perfect.
All right. All right. Let's go from there then.
Cool. Awesome. So faith and science. That was
Yes.
one of the topics we were talking about. How does faith, because how do you understand faith? Could you give me a definition? Because from the atheist perspective, usually faith is something like a belief that goes beyond the evidence or something along those lines.
Yeah. No, yes, there's something that goes beyond what we see. I think that I did just get through defining. I think we have to say that I would define what I mean by faith in three ways, just like I would affirm science in three ways. Um, First, I would say faith is a way of obtaining information. Second, it is a body of beliefs. And then third, it is a community of people, a faith community. So, yes, we believe that God revealed himself in the person of Jesus Christ. And so, therefore, there is that communication of God, of himself to us. We believe that God communicated himself in at least three ways. One, he does speak through nature, and that nature itself can communicate to us information. That would be the heavens declare the glory of God, like Psalm 19 says, or Romans chapter 1, in which it talks about how the attributes of God are manifest in nature. And so that would be the general way that everybody can have an awareness of something transcendent. Then we would say that God especially revealed himself in a particular way through the Abrahamic covenant and through the people of Israel, which then culminated in the third way, which would be in the incarnation of Jesus of Nazareth, who we understand to be the second person of the Trinity, became man and dwelt among us, who lived the life that we could not, died a death that was vicarious, rose again from the dead on the third day, ascended to the right hand of the Father, and we believe that one of these days he will come back and set up basically the kingdom that was presented to us from all the way to Genesis to Revelation. So that would be the way and the body. And then we'd talk about the community of faith, which of course is the church. So that's what I mean whenever I say faith. I'm not just using it in a very generic sense. And then whenever I talk about science, I'm talking about a methodology. In other words, there's a particular methodology that science is known for. However, every one of those things that we talk about on science are also controversial. In other words, whenever you read philosophers of science, they would say, okay, what are the methodologies for doing science? And if you go through all of the various things that they have, it's basically the attempt to obtain information empirically, that which can be obtained empirically. And so that would be the methodology. The body then would be, okay, what is it that can be studied? There again, you have a bit of disagreement in that you have what's known as the natural sciences. Those would be also what's called the hard sciences: physics, chemistry, biology, geology. Those are the ones that are considered to be the most hard and fast. Then you have the social sciences and everything from anthropology to economics. And then you move on over, and people forget there was a time in which theology was considered the queen of the sciences, up through the medieval period, up until the Enlightenment, I would say. So you have there's always been a debate about what exactly the methodology is, what exactly is the domain, and then science is a community. People forget just what a behemoth science is as an institution. In fact, I think one thing we probably will both agree, Tom, is that scientists are the new priesthood of our culture. That many ways the kind of confidence that people expressed in priest in times past, at a popular level, you'll see them express that kind of confidence often towards science. Science, sort of like the famous line in Breaking Bad where the Aaron Paul character said, yeah, science, and he expected Walter White to come through in a way that many people expect, the prophet to come through, the priest to come through nowadays. I think it was Arthur Clarke who said that any technology that's sufficiently advanced is indistinguishable from magic. And so in many ways, at a popular level, people expect science to deliver them the way they expected God to deliver them in the past. Science will be the one that will provide us food. Science will be the one that will provide us protection. Science eventually be that which gives us life beyond these mortal bodies, if you believe the transhumanists. So I would understand faith and science in those three ways. A way of obtaining knowledge, that body of beliefs, and then the community that is involved in all three.
You started popping again right there at the end. Could you jiggle the microphone with the wire a little bit and see if that fixes it?
Does it do anything?
Nope. Still try unplug it, plug it back in, and see if that works.
Okay.
You gotta select it again in the options.
I don't know what's going on here. Let's see.
Yep.
So
Yeah, it seems like, yep. So it seems like there's something in your mic that might be broken. You may need to get a new mic, but every once in a while it just starts.
I'm sorry to hear that, because it is a new mic, and I used it in a podcast this morning, and we didn't have that kind of problem.
Yeah, it wasn't. Sure. Yeah, it wasn't there when we started either. It was just something that happened recently. I have no idea what's going on, but yeah, it's like having a slight reverb right at the beginning of your words that's causing like a popping. It's very strange. But yeah, just whenever that happens, I'll let you know. You can just unplug it, plug it back in. It should solve the problem. Okay. So my first question is, for me, I obviously don't see faith as a methodology to gain knowledge. I do think science is. I think science is a good methodology. I think that the core of science is it provides us a way to differentiate imagination from reality. Any hypothesis you have, that seems to be what's required for something to count as a way to gain knowledge is can we use this method to show that whatever we are hypothesizing isn't just a figment of our imagination. So why should we trust faith as a reliable way to gain knowledge that isn't just a part of our imagination?
Yeah, let's go back to your definition. I'm not sure I followed you there. You seem to be stipulating a definition that I would wonder about. I think we just got through agreeing that the Christian faith operates from scriptures, and so if someone is going to try to understand that, there's going to be four things that we have. Christians will engage with scripture. They will also use their minds. They will engage with the tradition, and they will also embrace experience. And so you have what's often called the Wesleyan Quadrilateral, where we would use scripture, tradition, reason, and experience. I don't see where that would go against what you just got through saying, because we just got through saying what the domain is. Now, if you're going to stipulate that faith automatically doesn't fit into anything that you just got to describe, well, then I guess the conversation's over, because you win by stipulated definition. But if you want to say, okay, what is it that science engages with in the narrow sense? And it is something that is strictly engaged in that which is empirical. Correct? Is that what you say? Science is strictly empirical?
Well, sure. But so I was asking a more general question there. So
yeah. So if science is empirical, is mathematics science? No. So you do place it outside the realm of science.
So just to clarify, my question is you said faith was a way to gain knowledge, and science is also a way to gain knowledge. Now, what makes something a way to gain knowledge is that you can differentiate imagination from reality. And so my question is why would we consider faith a way to gain knowledge like science is? So I'm obviously not saying it is science. And there are other ways to gain knowledge like math and logic, conceptual knowledge. So my question is more specifically, why should we think faith, or what about faith gives us a way to differentiate? Is it just reality from imagination? Like science gives us a way to do that. Math gives us a way to do that. Logic gives us a way to do that. Does faith give us a way to do that?
Yeah. Let's go back again. I think, first off, your definition of, go back again, what you were saying about imagination is different from reality. Is that what you said?
Yeah. So knowledge, for something that qualifies knowledge, epistemology is my hypothesis something that corresponds to reality, or is it simply something that I've made up in my head? So is it
Yeah.
imagination or reality?
Yeah. So I would affirm the definition of truth that you just gave, that a statement is true to the extent that it corresponds to reality. So, question I would have for you then, is it possible to make an affirmation that is not able to be empirically verified one way or the other? And does that constitute as knowledge on your part?
Yes. So there are lots of examples like formal logic systems,
Hmm.
analytic truths. I'm imagining a unicorn. There are many types of other kinds of knowledge, but all of those kinds also have this feature of they have a way to differentiate. Does it correspond to reality or is it just your imagination? So that's the one key feature that's important to all forms of knowledge, to all forms of epistemology is, can you differentiate? Does this correspond to reality or is it just a figment of your imagination?
Yeah, yeah, that's a great question. And I would affirm what you're trying, I think I would affirm most of what you just got through saying. I'm not sure that I would just simply uh, say, okay, anything that cannot be affirmed by logic or by some system of trying to understand it, that therefore it is simply imagination, i.e., faith. I'm not sure I'm following that, Tom.
Oh, right,
But
right. So
anyway, yeah,
I wasn't asserting faith was one of these things. It was a question. I was saying
yeah,
there's a class of things that we count as legitimate knowledge, math,
yeah,
logic, science. We count those as legitimate knowledge. And my question is, does faith offer us a way, offer us some epistemic principle that we can use like all these other ones do? So the reason these we accept as knowledge is they have an epistemic principle that gives us a way to show they are not just imaginary. Does faith, I'm not asserting faith as I'm asking you the question, does
yeah.
faith also have some epistemic principle that gives us a way to differentiate, is this just something in people's imagination or can it differentiate between that and reality? Also, I think your mic's popping again. Could you plug it and unplug it?
Yeah, I'll give it a try, see if it has. Did it work?
Yep. Perfect.
Okay. And I'm so sorry. Let me go back again because you seem to differentiate faith from mathematics and other realms of human understanding, logic, things of that nature. I and I think that you're saying that things that cannot be demonstrated, therefore this is something that is not real and is imaginary. Is that kind of, and therefore we put that over into the area of faith? Is that what you're saying? Is that
No,
how
no.
you're
So
defining faith?
no. So I'm saying anything we come up with, any new methodology,
Hmm.
it starts as not doesn't work until it's been demonstrated to work. And so we know
Hmm.
some things have been demonstrated to work. Math, logic, science, those have passed the test of that they're trustworthy now. But anything we
Hmm.
posit now, whether it's faith or Scientology or phrenology or a new
Yeah.
science, string theory, all of these things start in this domain of we don't know if they're reliable. And then they have to pass some kind of a test to go from they're untrustworthy to trustworthy. And so I'm trying to figure out, does faith pass this test? What does
Yeah.
faith do that makes it reasonable for us to believe it's on the trustworthy side rather than the untrustworthy side?
Yeah. So we started off with the definition of truth as that which corresponds to reality. Then you said that if it works, it's true. Is that what you said? Am I following you there? If it
Well, there's
passed muster. In
Well, there's
other words, it's
some,
demonstrated to be true.
yeah, there has to be some way, some epistemic principle to be able to differentiate, does it correspond to reality or does it not correspond to reality? Is it just a figment of our imagination? So there needs to be some kind of a test which it has to pass, or it has to work by demonstrating that this test,
Yeah.
to be able to show that this is not just a figment of our imagination, to show it does correspond to reality. Because truth and knowing truth are two separate things. Like, there are facts that we just don't know. What are the number of grains of sands in Alpha Centauri? We have no idea. There is a true statement to that question, but we need something that gives us a justification to believe one particular assertion is the truth. And so for
Yeah.
faith, whatever conclusion faith draws, we need some way to show, is faith a reliable system to get us to truth, or does faith lead to more of just the imaginary false things that aren't truth? And so we need some way to demonstrate that faith is reliable, like math, like logic, like science, in order to put it into that trustworthy category of a reliable way to gain knowledge.
Yeah. I think we're still struggling with definitions, because I see, first off, you're using faith in a way that I didn't define it just a minute ago. And second,
Oh, just to
I
clarify, I
see,
thought you said the first thing you said was faith is a way to gain knowledge. That was the one I was going off of.
yeah, but, and as I was just, then I was getting ready to say, because then you contrasted it with mathematics and everything else. And I'm trying to understand how it is that everything, for example, the laws of logic, like the law of excluded middle or the law of non-contradiction. There are certain things that we accept as properly basic, and that we take them as postulates and axioms that we operate with. And so therefore, this is more or less a faith position. Now, I would agree with you. I think I'm agreeing with you, Tom, on a lot of things here, in that what I would say is it needs to be a reasonable faith. In other words, does it actually, in the end, correspond to the picture that we see in the world? But the idea that only that which is empirically verifiable is that which I will say is true. I mean, are you accepting logical positivism? Is that what you're saying? Are you embracing that?
No, I didn't
Okay,
say anything about that.
okay. Well, then, so that's the whole point of logical positivism, is that it is either definitional, incorrigible, or empirically verifiable, and if it's not, then it has no basis in reality. And the way I just heard you say that, and I could be misunderstanding. That's why we're having this conversation, so I can get to understand where you're at. I don't know any of us that would say, okay, there are not certain assumptions that we're starting with. That happens whether it's Euclid's postulates or anything else. So so to say, okay, what about faith? And I would say, I'm not just talking about faith as something just merely as an object. I'm talking about the Christian faith. In other words, if you're asking me, why do I hold to the Christian faith? I would say, well, it's for these reasons. And they have to do with scripture. They have to do with tradition. They have to do with my personal experience. And they have to do with reason. And so I would argue that the Christian faith is a reasonable faith. But I'll be quick to say it is a faith.
So I would be confused when you said logic was faith, because that would be drastically contradicting my view. I would say the reason I trust logic is because I can build a logic tree and follow the premises to the conclusion, and I can test if the structure of logic corresponds to anything in my imagination, to reality, whatever. And so I can test if the logical structure gets me to true conclusions. And if it does, then I have a reason to believe it.
So you hold to Aristotelian logic? The laws of logic as a, the law of identity, the law of non-contradiction, the law of excluded middle. So you would hold those to be true whether or not the universe ever existed?
Yes.
So they're transcendently true.
Sort of. I mean, I don't think they exist, but yes, they describe things transcendently.
Okay. You said they were true, so they correspond to reality.
Right. So does the word "the sky is blue." That sentence also corresponds to reality. Or dinosaurs existed. That also corresponds to reality. But the language itself, like the words, don't exist anywhere. Like the English words "a dinosaur" didn't exist anywhere. But the
But the laws of
words.
logic are not merely linguistic conceits. You and I are agreeing. I'm agreeing with you
Well, I
that the
think they are.
laws.
So
So you don't
logic
think
is.
so you don't think the laws of logic would exist if the universe didn't exist?
Yeah, laws of logic are human languages. Literally, Stanford Encyclopedia, Philosophy, Classical Logic, very first sentence, logic is a formal language. It's a language we use to describe the way reality is. So A
So
equals
you
A
believe in it because
is
it works so far.
sort of. I'm not.
So far.
No, I mean, I believe in it because it describes reality. So that's what.
So if logic breaks down, would you still believe it's true?
No. So I think that, like, for example, quantum mechanics, it's argued that there are non-standard logics that better describe reality. And if that was demonstrated to be the case, then I would supplant Aristotelian logic with the non-standard logics. They would be better descriptors of reality.
Yeah. So what does quantum physics do? I'm not a quantum physicist. Maybe you can tell me. My understanding is that quantum physics has some areas that are challenging to us, you and I, as mere mortals. We seem to be running up against a wall where things seem to be both, the cat is both alive and dead until we observe it. Those kinds of very weird things. I guess what I'm trying to understand, see, I think I might have a higher view of logic than you do, because I actually believe that, truth transcends nature. So let me ask you this. Are you a materialist or are you a naturalist?
Both.
So, well, I mean, you don't think that, I mean, there is a difference. There are those who are strictly materialist, and that's a difficulty because, they would say, okay, that nothing such as information or the laws of logic are mathematical entities that those things don't exist if they're non-material. And of course, one of the problems is that matter itself seems to be malleable. And so most that I know would not simply settle with being a materialist. They would call themselves a naturalist. They would say that everything can be summed up within nature. So would you call yourself, like, in other words, you would say there are non-material things that are true and real, i.e. the laws of logic. In other words, 2 plus 2 does equal 4. You and I would agree with, the fundamental theorem of arithmetic. We'd agree that really is the fundamental theorem. So from that, we'd say, okay, I mean, that's the cool thing about arithmetic, is that it's abstracted from the material entity that it's adding or subtracting. So are you saying that all of this is simply, I mean, and there's an entire school of pragmatism that would say, okay, these are laws in the sense that we notice that they're regular, and that there are, that it works so far. But and that's, if that's the definition you're working with, I'm fine with that. I just wanted to make sure I knew.
Well, as far as I know, like in philosophy, physicalism and naturalism are subsets of one another, so they're like the same thing. I don't think there's any like version of naturalism that entails, or at least not in the classical sense, that entails like abstract truths, because most are like nominalists. So nominalists say there are no universals, abstracts don't exist.
Mm-hmm.
So those are usually synonyms, and materialism is, it's more like physicalism is typically the like word for, like, it's just mind stuff. But naturalism and materialism are usually like synonyms.
Yeah, there's a lot of guys who do use them as synonyms. Then there are those that are careful to say, well, actually, especially those who are going to deal with things like, as you just mentioned, abstract objects, are symbolic logic, or consciousness, the whole mind-brain question, emergentism, things of that nature. But this is, what we were going to talk about creation and creationism. If there's any questions you had about that.
Yeah, sure. Also,
you got Yeah, now you know where I'm coming from in faith and science. I do understand these to be two different bodies of knowledge, and I'll respectfully disagree with you. I really do believe I have some type of knowledge in knowing God and knowing Jesus Christ. I do think that that's a real type of knowledge. But I'll agree with you that it's two different ways of approaching things. I'm not disagreeing with that.
All right. Yeah, and you
Because
mentioned that you said it was properly basic. So if it's a kind of properly basic knowledge, I would understand the kind of argument you're trying to make there.
Yeah, well, I do think that there are, what is experiments, but the attempt to have carefully controlled experiences. We learn from experience, and so therefore science then said, okay, let's try to do this very carefully, and let's see if we can make these experiences repeatable. And that's where we come up with experiments, where they can be done over and over again. And without a doubt, one of the nice things about science, particularly in the field of physics and chemistry, is that they're able to have something that's very tightly controlled, very highly repeatable, and they're able to have an extremely high confidence that what they have is this is the correct understanding, and that's really sweet. I think we would all agree that science, I see science as a massive good. I really am very much pro-science.
Yeah. First, your mic is doing the thing again.
Is it popping again? Okay, I apologize.
Yep. It's all right. And
all right, I'm back. Can you hear me?
perfect. Yep.
Okay.
So,
All right.
why should we accept creationism? Because my view is, what kind of creationism? Are you young Earth, old Earth? And because my view is that we should accept the scientific view that there's nothing but natural stuff, and that's probably the best explanation that the origin of the universe is quantum fields, and that I don't think there's any reason to believe there is a creator of any kind.
Yeah. Well, that is one view you can do, is that you could say, and so if I understand what you're saying that quantum fields are ultimate. Is that so?
Yes.
That would be the ultimate reality, and so therefore they're necessary.
Yes, that's one of the ways to go for. I'm happy with an infinite regression. I think that's the consensus in physics, is that there's an infinite regression of past physical states, and I'm happy with that. But I like necessary beings. I'm fine with those too. So I'm happy with calling quantum field necessary being.
Well, no, not necessary being, necessary reality. In other words, I wouldn't see a regress as something personal or as a being, but I am asking what you understand to be that which is ultimate and nothing yet beyond it.
Okay, so yeah, in philosophy, being just means an object that exists. So the technical term being is just an object. So I would say the two interpretations that I like, one is that there's a past infinite regress of physical things, and two is that there is a necessary being in the philosophical sense, as in a being that was uncreated outside of space and time, that is singular, and that is a quantum field. And both of those are versions I like. They're two separate hypotheses, but I'm happy with either one.
Yeah. Going back again, the concept of regress is an abstract concept. It's something that we abstract from seeing something repeated over and over and over again. And so that's why I was asking that. So you and I are struggling with the same question: why is there something rather than nothing? And so and we both, I am an old Earth creationist, and so that I would affirm this pretty much everything that science has arrived at in terms of its standard model. We recognize the tentativeness of this, that things are open to revision later on, but it seems fairly reasonable. I don't have a problem with the notion of the universe coming into existence about 13.8 billion years ago. There was about 3 different iterations of stars, or generation of stars, by the time we got to our star, that had sufficiently heavy enough of atoms that had not just hydrogen and helium, but also nice things like oxygen and iron and all that kind of stuff. So that would take a long time to arrive at that. And so then our planet came along about 4 point some odd billion years ago. So then this planet seems to be extraordinary in that it seems to have had some very, very special conditions just right. This is kind of the rare earth hypothesis that somehow life arrived not too long after the earth itself was formed and went through the Hadithan era, which is quite remarkable whenever you think about it. That we then went through a stage of billions of years in which the life on Earth was microbial, one cell type of living. Somewhere just prior to the Cambrian era, we started having multicellular life, the various stages. We have the various near total extinctions at least 5 times, I'm told. Then we come into these last few million years in which there is the rise of various hominids, that which we would consider to be modern Homo sapiens, humans like you and me, seem to have come around maybe 200,000 years ago. Who knows for sure whenever we talk about that. Then from that, we have what looks like the rise of cities and agriculture somewhere around 15,000 years ago. So I'm very comfortable with the standard model. I find it to be very compatible with the idea that there is a creator and who called the world into existence. What we're talking about, again, it's the Anselmian definition: God is that which no greater can be conceived. In other words, what is that which is ultimate? What is it? And if you say, okay, it's a quantum field, that's your faith position. You can, because can you prove that there's anything beyond the quantum field? Well, maybe there is. I'd be interested to hear if you're satisfied with that. That's perfectly fine. But that's one way of looking at it. I think it's a very reasonable thing to say, okay, what is ultimate? I'm enjoying this conversation. I hope you are too. But it is the meeting of minds. And if I had enough time, I would be watching the scrolling that's going down on the side that you're probably able to read.
Don't do that. Definitely suggestion. Do not read the chat ever. Never ever read the chat.
Yeah. And so what this, I really do believe that we are having a meeting of the minds. We may not agree at all with what we're saying with each other, but I believe you're a mind, I'm a mind, and it's a remarkable thing that's going on. Now, it's simply a question. Did the quantum material universe give birth to minds, or did a mind give birth to the material universe? And that's where we're starting. That's the whole thing about the doctrine of creation. The doctrine of creation from a Christian perspective says that God created the world out of nothing. This is in contrast to dualism. This is in contrast to pantheism. And it's in contrast to materialism. And so this would be the idea that there was a conscious entity that brought the world into existence, and that this entity was actually a society of minds. In other words, we would say this is one being who is in perfect relationship. So God did not have to create the world. So therefore, this talks about God, the contingency of the world. And I think both you and I don't know. Do you think the world is necessary? Do you think that it could have been otherwise?
Yes.
Okay, so we're both agreeing that the world is finite, that it came into existence, that it is contingent. I think we both agree that it is ordered. In other words, there seems to be some type of rules that are operative, that we are able to recognize, and these regularities, we call them laws of logic, mathematics, and then the laws of physics. I mean, you think about it. They say that you and I, it all comes down to biology. And of course, biology all comes down to chemistry. And chemistry all comes down to physics. And then what does physics come down to? Well, I suspect it's metaphysics, but you don't seem to want to go there. So that's
I think physics is metaphysics. So I think those are synonymous terms. So.
Well, Okay, explain that. That's fascinating. Let's talk about that. So what do you understand metaphysics to be in contrast to physics, and how is it? Yeah. So tell me what you understand both of them to be.
Well, metaphysics is the fundamental first principles of reality. So I'm a metaphysical naturalist. I think natural principles, particles, materialism, that is the fundamental nature of reality. And so in physics, we just think metaphysics as the term developed in philosophy, just to mean whatever the fundamental first natures of reality are simply describing something in physics.
Mhm. Do you think that physics itself, so you would say physics itself is able to obtain and arrive at the metaphysical foundation?
Yes, I think that's the quantum field. I think we have done that.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Uh, I find that fascinating. Have there been times in the scientific endeavor where something was considered to be foundational and then it turned out not to be?
Yes, many
Yeah.
times.
So therefore, it could be that something would go beyond the basic of quantum fields then.
Sure. It's definitely
So
possible.
so at this point, it's a faith position for you that that's the fundamental one.
Well, this is what I wanted to bring up on earlier. So, for me, the difference here is that the more reasonable hypothesis, whenever we're trying to
Mhm.
posit something, an explanation of the unknown, the more reasonable explanation is the one that uses pieces that have been demonstrated to exist independent of our imagination. So, like if I said, if we saw a hoof print in the snow, we want to say what caused the hoof print. Someone says a horse, that's reasonable because we have past evidence of horses. We know that they're not just a figment of our imagination. If somebody said a unicorn, that would be a terrible explanation because we have no independent evidence of unicorns existing. And so just
far.
positing that would be a terrible way because you're
Yeah.
just adding in something new to the hypothesis that has no basis.
Don't tell that to my granddaughter.
Yes. I mean, I like unicorns too. I mean, I wish they were real.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
But so like in the case of physics, string theory, quantum mechanics, just to take string theory as an example, string theory is
Yeah.
a combination of two things. It's early universe inflation, which was demonstrated in observations in the CMB from Alan Guth's early universe inflation, and virtual particles. Virtual particles were demonstrated in the Casimir effect, things we can demonstrate in the lab. So all of the pieces to string theory have been demonstrated that they are real and not just figments of our imagination. So it's kind of like the horse. It's a thing
So
we
you think
posit.
string theory? So you think string theory has been demonstrated?
No, the parts
Okay.
have been demonstrated. So
Okay.
each of the
That's
parts
helpful.
of string theory were demonstrated. The combination has not been. We have not demonstrated that that combination is correct. But each of the parts of the theory have been demonstrated. And if we contrast this to like a creator, an all-powerful, all-knowing, all-loving personal being who's outside of space-time, none of those parts have been demonstrated. We don't have any good evidence for any of those parts like we do for early universe inflation and the Casimir effect. Both of those can be demonstrated in a lab. We can demonstrate the parts to the string theory, but we can't even demonstrate the parts of the creator God theory. And so to me, it seems like if we're contrasting these two, the string theory is more like the horse analogy, even though, like, say this is in Antarctica or something. We've never seen a horse in Antarctica, but a horse is still a better explanation than unicorn here because at least we have past evidence of horses. And the unicorn would be more like the God hypothesis because it's constructed of a lot of things that we don't have any hard evidence that they're real properties independent of our imagination. So in my case, it seems more rational to go with the quantum field theory explanation of the universe rather than the God theory, just like it's more reasonable to think that a horse caused a hoof print rather than a unicorn caused a hoof print.
Yeah.
Also, your
So
mic is doing the thing again.
I'm sorry. Let's do this.
Yeah, someone in the chat posts one is imaginary, one is baseless.
So, sorry about the mic.
No problem.
Yeah. So, in other words, you would say, and again, you know, our conversation, we were talking about the doctrine of creation. I do think that the doctrine of creation is a very reasonable approach to things. I think that none of the things that you said poses any real difficulty to a Christian doctrine of creation. In fact, that is why so many scientists are also Christians. I mean, I'm thinking of some very good friends that are. You mentioned about evidence. I do think that and I'll be right up front. I do think that I do have a piece of evidence that I wish you had. And so, Tom, what would it take? Uh, let's say that tonight, while you're resting, let's say God visits you. I mean, God Himself talks to Tom Jump. Would you think you were having a brain lesion, a
Yes.
schizophrenic episode? Would there be anything that would let you know that this is something that is real, that it's actually, or in other words, in order for Tom to believe, it needs to be public. It needs to be, in other words, if Jesus comes down from the sky, Tom Jump will be the very
That would be
first
good.
Christian.
So, novel testable predictions. That's my criterion. So, for any
Okay.
belief, what qualifies as evidence is novel testable prediction. So, if the things in Revelation start happening, that's really great evidence for Christianity. If I die and I go and meet God in heaven, really great evidence for Christianity. Jesus comes back to life, really
Yeah.
great evidence for Christianity. If he looks like Obi-Wan Kenobi, I'm gonna be very confused. But so he's like, because he's a short Middle Eastern guy. So
Yeah, we would both be confused.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so for me,
So
the criterion is if
let
you
me
can
just
say,
let me ask you this: Are you telling me right now that if you had lived back in the days of Jesus in the four Gospels, and here's Jesus the sage going around doing what he's doing, and he's walking on water, feeding 5,000, healing lepers, he would have had no better Christian, no better disciple than Tom Jump.
oh well, sure. So like, there's two things. If I lived back then and had the knowledge of back then, obviously I believe a lot of crazy things. If I lived back then with the knowledge I have now, you could still count that as novel testament predictions if I saw it. So like if Jesus said, I'm going to die and in 3 days I'm going to rise, and it
Mhm.
happens, that's a novel testable prediction. That's evidence. If he says, I can walk on water, walks on water, novel testable prediction, that counts as evidence. So yes, if I could demonstrate those were not fakes, kind of like the current magicians who work in Las Vegas or
Yeah,
something.
right. We don't
And
want to be deceived. We
right.
we recognize, and again, there's another thing you and I agree with, and that is we should test things. In fact, I think you know enough of the Bible to know that the Bible itself says, "Be sure to test all things."
Yep.
Yeah. So I think we would agree there. So you're telling me that if you had seen all those things, that's all that's keeping you from being a Christian.
Yeah, sure. Novel testable predictions is my criterion for accepting anything. And so if Jesus said I'm going to die and be crucified and rise in 3 days and that happened, I'd be like, yeah, that's a really good evidence. That's
Mhm,
definitely good
mhm.
evidence.
Yeah. Can I gently say I doubt that? That I'm not sure I'm convinced.
Well, I can understand why you would have that bias, but from mine, like for me, what I consider the best evidence ever presented for a God is from the
Yeah,
Bhagavad Gita.
I'm not questioning God. I'm questioning Tom.
No, no, yeah, that's why. So what I consider the best evidence for any God comes
Mhm.
from the Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita predicts the age of the earth is 4.3 billion years ago. That's within 5%. That's a very good prediction. And it's, for me, I consider that to be the best evidence I've ever heard for any God because it's a novel testable prediction. 6,000 years ago, some guys predicted the age of the earth within 5% accuracy. And so whenever you give novel testable predictions, I count that as evidence. If we started to see the stuff from Revelation, I would definitely start to believe in Christianity. That's pretty reasonable. So it's because my methodology, I have high function autism. My methodology is very strict. If I get novel testable predictions and they work, I believe it, and that's pretty much just a done deal. So if I had a magic 8 ball and you said it's going to predict the next lottery numbers 5 times in a row, and you get the first 3 right, I'm going to believe it. I'm going to be 100% magic 8 ball supporter because it works. That's all I care about.
Hmm. Well, and I would, what I would say to you is go for it. Don't, and I would assume the reason you're having these conversations, do you consider yourself to be an evangelistic atheist? I mean,
In de
you've got a
facto,
program. I mean, you're on a
yeah.
program.
Well, it's my
Yeah.
job, so it's like I don't consider a McDonald's worker a evangelist for McDonald's. I consider them to be an employee because they need a job. Like if I had infinite money, would I be doing this? Probably not.
So this is strictly a job for you?
Yes. So I had major depression, and talking to people via conversations was a way for me to practice human communication skills because I'd never spoke to anybody for like the first 20 something years of my life.
Okay. Okay. Fascinating. Well, I'm sorry. Like I said, that's. I mean, I'd love to hear more about that. High functioning autism. So have you? So this is your full time job
Yep.
doing what you're doing here. Do you do this every day?
I do now because I have a volunteer who sets up all my conversations, and he's setting them up once or twice a day. I used to do them like 3 times a week, and he's like, "We're doing them all day." I'm like, "All right." So I take weekends off though. So
Okay. So this is your means of income. This is the way that you make your living.
yep. I also do donations, so plasma and stool donations. That pays well too.
Okay, okay. Um, so this is the Tom Jump Evangelistic Ministries for Atheism. Is
Well, it's mostly, I think, because the foundation of my channel is based on my epistemology and my morality, and religion is
Yeah.
just a good way to contrast the effectiveness of my epistemology. I don't really think it's not about atheism. It's about my specific epistemology and morality. Because I also do a lot of politics, flat Earth, the Bigfoot. So it's not just atheism.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you and I would agree on a lot of things here. In that, I do want to have epistemological virtue. I don't believe in Bigfoot, and flat earthers are bizarre. I think we'd probably agree on all of those things. I do find the universe to be filled with wonder and awe. I think science is, like I said, really cool. One of the things that I think that I think one of the things that I was trying to hinting at, um, I really, I have you ever had anything that you would consider to be a religious experience?
Yes. So I
Okay,
used to
tell me
be
about it.
Christian.
Well, that's what I was wondering where we're headed with this. So tell me about what you give me your testimony of conversion and your testimony of deconversion, and
Sure.
you can
Also,
go ahead and be. You're just as, is it popping again?
yep. And so
Okay.
while you're fixing that, I will give my story. My parents are both very religious, Christian, brought up in a Christian household, went to Catholic grade school, Catholic high school. And during that time period, I was very, very devoted to God and Jesus. I had very powerful emotional experiences of believing God and Jesus was there in my life. And I had all of my hope because I was diagnosed with major depression. So I had this my entire life from very, very early age. So my belief in Christianity was the most important thing in the world to me. Having this belief that there was this ultimate perfect being who cared about me more than anything in the world and could help me was the most important thing in the world to me. And after years and years of praying every morning, every night for help and not getting it, to help with my depression, I eventually lost the ability to believe there was a perfect being. I hadn't become an atheist. I just hated God more or less because he wasn't
Mhm.
helping me. And over time, that more became I stopped believing in him. I still wasn't an atheist. I hadn't researched anything into philosophy at this point. There was sometime like in middle of the high school, 17, 18-year age. I just stopped being able to believe there was such a thing. Like if you pray to a milk carton every day for 20 years, you eventually stop being able to believe it's anything but a milk
Yeah,
carton. And that's what
yeah.
happened to me. It wasn't until about 6 or 7 years later when I started to research philosophy, when I got into the realm of the new atheism kind of a thing. That's when I started to more move into the atheism camp. But that is my general story of how I started Christian, became an atheist.
Okay, fascinating. I get it. I think your story is not that unusual, um, and I sympathize, actually empathize with a lot of what you're saying. I do get it. Um, a God who is all good, all loving, all wise shouldn't. It just seems to make sounds to reason that life should be better for a lot of individuals than what it is if there is the God of the Bible. That seems to be what you're saying, right?
Well, yeah, that was my initial reason for um, not being able to believe that prayer or God was meaningful anymore. But that was totally
Mhm.
separate from like, I didn't have any rational justifications back then. It was just
Mhm.
purely based on my pain and lack of help. It wasn't
Yeah.
until I got into the philosophy that was more like, oh, here are the actual reasons why this position is more rational, and here's why we should adopt these kinds of different epistemic values. And so I really didn't do much intellectual introspection back
Yeah.
then. I was too focused on the depression.
So others who have gone through similar journeys and ended up being Christian at the end of the journey rather than being atheist, do you think that they were just deluded, or what do you think's going on there?
Well, I think that there are things in life, like if I was praying to God and I got what I needed to cure my depression, I'd be a Christian for the rest of
Mhm.
my life. Doesn't matter what happened. If I got what I needed to cure my depression, I'd be Christian. And so it happens to be the case in life that religious experience and specifically community are a lot of the things people need to cure those kinds of ills in life. And churches, specifically religious churches, offer that better
Community,
more often than like pretty much anybody else. I'm
right?
really jealous of that. I want to start an atheist church because I think that the church opportunities of community that are provided from religion are something that's extremely valuable in
You
human
realize that's
society.
what Julian the Apostate wanted to do.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of people that do it. We got Sunday Assembly,
Well,
Alan DeButton. So
yeah, yeah. No, I mean, seriously, Julian the Apostate, whenever, he became the emperor of Rome and he rejected the Christian faith, one of the things that made him so upset and so aggravated was that uh, the Christians seemed to do so doggone well at those kinds of things that he felt like just human beings ought to do.
yeah,
And yeah, and so why can't we, why can't we apostates have hospitals and charities and you know, I mean, I do understand what you're saying, and I get the bitterness of disappointment. I really, really, really do. Um, and
but I wanted to
I
answer your question. So your
yeah,
question was,
yeah,
do I think that people who convert to Christianity after those are deluded? And I'd say no, because I think the reason when they're in those depressed states and they're asking for help and searching for help like I was, they can often find those in church and community. And so they genuinely do find the cure for their depression in the communities from religion. And so it makes sense that they would attribute that to religion. So no, I don't think they're delusional or deluded, or that they had like a experience from an epileptic seizure or something. Which
yeah,
that's the thing. People do have epilepsy and they are
right,
religious because of that. But I
right,
don't think that having a transformative experience that cures you from your depression in some state would make you unjustified in believing
yeah,
that there's something significant about whatever it is you're doing.
yeah. I think you're talking to somebody who was my experience is almost the opposite of yours, in that my parents were uh, they were not in church. They were not religious. They had a religious background, but it was my great grandfather who would pick me up and take me to church occasionally. I didn't want to go. I would hide from him, go out in the woods whenever he would show up so I didn't have to go. And then during my teenage years, really got into trouble and really made a mess of things. And personally, it's the old fashioned evangelical Billy Graham style evangelistic conversion that was transformative to me. And it wasn't just, I mean, and Tom, I don't know how to say it any other way than I really do. I experienced a personal encounter with Jesus Christ, and it was about as real as I didn't hear an audible voice. I'll admit right up, I didn't see the burning bush. I didn't see him walk on water, but it was a very powerful personal thing. And I know that one should not build their faith just on personal experiences. I understand the limitations of experience, and I understand the limitations of that which is subjective. Having said that, that doesn't mean they're not influential and they're not real, as your testimony and my testimony just got through. You just got through saying just how powerful it was influential upon you to go 20 years begging God to help you, and then nothing happened. I mean, I feel for you. I can't even begin to imagine what a disappointment that would be. There are a number of explanations we could do here. Some of them would be very harsh and cruel, and I'll acknowledge that right up front. I have some Calvinist friends that would have the conclusion that I'm elect and you're not. And so therefore, the reason why I have this loving, wonderful encounter with God is because God loves me, chose me, and he didn't you. Well, I just want to rush to say I don't agree with that view either. But I just want you to know it's out there, and you know it's out there, and we all know it's out there, and we disagree with it. And in fact, most good Calvinists I know would bristle at that characterization, and as well they should. But there are those yahoos that would say that sort of thing. I really do believe in a reasonable faith. In other words, I think that if you do talk to evangelicals, and obviously you do, we are trying to make sense of something very real and transformative that happened to us. It was real. Does the Christian faith meet that? The fact of the matter is, what the Christian faith tells us, and it fits very well, is that there is something rather than nothing. It is here on a razor's edge. It's very special, the whole idea of fine-tuning. The earth is this remarkable place that is quite beautiful. There does seem to be something quite remarkable that converged together to bring about human beings. It's why I like reading someone like Simon Conway Morris and his discussions of these things. And here we are. There's also something tragically wrong with us. I do believe, and we're the hour is just about done. The next time and I hope there is another time because I really enjoyed this. I would like for us to talk about you've talked about your epistemology. The next time we get together, let's talk about morality. What constitutes an ethical life? I would really enjoy that. What is the basics of ethics? All of those things, because I really do believe that there are three things that we need to be able to have a life that is the good life. And that is that we need to know the good, we need to know the true, and we need to know the beautiful. And I do want to hear from you. I've appreciated hearing your story.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. I really appreciate you coming on. And we did have a super chat who wanted to ask you a question. But yeah, definitely have you on again to talk about morality.
Okay.
So the super chat we have is for both. Isn't God the collection of good beings? Isn't God the greater good?
Yeah. Well, what I would say, Anselm's definition of whatever God is, he would say, God is that which no greater can be conceived. And what Anselm was trying to say is, whatever is the ultimate reality, that which is necessary, that which cannot not be, that is what is worthy of embracing as the ultimate truth. And he would say that's what we call God. A collection of good beings, or isn't God the greater good? I think that one of the things the Christian faith is attempting to do, this is what makes the biblical faith, I think, distinct from the other faiths. A lot of times people say, hey, look, there's like 10,000 different deities that people have postulated, everybody from Zeus to Thor to, you don't believe in any of them. You're a 99% atheist. I'm just 100% atheist.
We just go one God further.
Yeah, that, and I get a kick out of that. I think that's great because I say, congratulations, you're almost up to the point of an Old Testament prophet. That was the point they were making. We're not talking about one entity among many. We're talking about whatever it is that which is ultimate. And I do think that that's a worthy question to have, whether you're a philosopher or a scientist or a theologian. What is that which is ultimate, that which is necessary and cannot not be? Whatever that is worthy of our adoration as God.
Cool. Yeah, I'd probably say that's a quantum field. I don't know if I'd worship it, but I think it's ultimate. But yeah, thanks again for coming on. I really appreciate it. It was a great conversation, and I'll definitely set up a second one about morality sometime.
Yeah. Yeah, I enjoyed it. Thank you so much. And now that I have time, I'll look at the chats, and I'm sure they've all been yelling. They all been screaming at me for the last 30, 45 minutes.
Yep. There's a lot of mic popping. So annoying. Oh my God, the mics, my ears, bleeding.
I am so sorry. We will find
It's
it
all right.
because this is, I would see that as some type of providential or demonic, or it could be just simply, or it could be just be simply the laws of nature at work. And so, it's, there you go. All right. Thank you, Tom. This has been great.
Absolutely. Have a nice day.